You know, there's a feeling that comes over a lot of folks about the middle of August. You look out at that garden and the beans are winding down, the squash vines are looking tired, the lettuce bolted a month ago, and somewhere in the back of your mind a little voice says, well, that's about it for the year. And so the tiller comes out or the weeds take over, and by the middle of September that garden's just sitting there doing nothing at all. And here's what ought to stop you in your tracks. In most of this country, you've still got 60, 70, 80 growing days left after August the 1st. That's a whole second season sitting right there in front of you. And most folks just walk away from it. Our great-grandparents never did. They knew that the food that carried a family through the cold months wasn't the food you ate in July. It was the food you planted in August. That fall garden was the difference between a full cellar and a lean winter. So today I'm going to show you exactly what to put in the ground this month. I've got 10 crops for you. 10 things you can plant in August that'll give you a real harvest this fall. And some of them will keep feeding you long after the first hard frost has knocked everything else flat. We're going to count them down from 10 to number 1. And for each one, I'll tell you not just what it is, but when to plant it, how to get it up in the heat, and how far into the cold it'll carry you. So grab your coffee and stick with me, 'cause number 1 is the toughest, most generous plant in the whole fall garden, and it don't quit till the snow buries it. But before we get to the countdown, we've got to talk about the ground rules of fall planting, 'cause this is where most folks go wrong. And it ain't the seed's fault. Fall gardening is a different animal from spring gardening, and there's 4 things you've got to get right. The first one is counting backwards, and this is the whole ball game. You need to know your average first frost date. Your extension office, or darn near any seed catalog, will tell you, or ask any old-timer at the feed store, and he'll tell you to the week. Once you've got that date, you look at the days to maturity on the seed packet, and you count backwards from your frost date. If your first frost lands around October the 15th, and your beans need 55 days, you count back 55 days, and that's your last planting date, right around the 20th of August. Simple as that. Write your frost date on the wall of the shed and quit guessing. Now the second thing, and this is the part folks miss, you gotta add some padding. In the spring, the days are getting longer and warmer every single day, so a plant just races along. In the fall, it's the opposite. Every day's a little shorter, a little cooler, and everything slows way down come late September. Old-timers called it the Persephone period, when the daylight drops under about 10 hours and growth just about stops. So take those days to maturity on the packet and add 10 days to 2 weeks onto it for fall. Plant a little earlier than you think you need to. What you're really doing is getting the plant to full size before the light runs out. After that, it just sits there holding in the cold like a plant in a walk-in cooler, and you harvest as you need it. The third thing is heat, and this one surprises people. We're planting in August, which is about the hottest, driest stretch of the whole year, and we're planting cool weather crops. That's a rough start. Lettuce and spinach seed will straight up refuse to sprout when the soil's above 80 degrees or so. They'll just lay there and sulk. So you've got to help them along. Plant your seeds a little deeper than you would in the spring, where the soil's cooler and damper. Water them every single day, sometimes twice, 'cause a seed bed that dries out once is a seed bed that don't come up. Lay a board or a burlap sack or a piece of shade cloth right over the row to hold the moisture and keep the sun off, and check under it every morning. The minute you see those seeds cracking through, that cover comes off. And if the shade of a taller crop falls across that bed in the afternoon, so much the better. Some folks even chill their lettuce seed in the fridge a few days before sowing. And I'll tell you, it helps. The fourth thing is feeding that ground. Your spring crops have been eaten out of that soil for 3 or 4 months, and they've taken a lot with them. So when a row comes out, don't just poke new seed into that tired dirt. Pull the old plants, work in a good few inches of finished compost or some aged manure, rake it smooth, and water it in good the day before you plant. It don't take long, and it's the difference between a fall crop that limps and one that really runs. And one last habit worth having. Get yourself some row cover. That's just a light spun fabric you lay right over the bed on hoops, and it's about the best money you'll spend in the garden. It'll keep the bugs off your young greens in September, and come the first light frost in October, it'll buy you 3, 4, 5 degrees of protection, which is often another 2 or 3 weeks of harvest. An old bed sheet thrown over the row on a frosty night will do the same job in a pinch. All right, with all that under our belts, let's start the countdown. Coming in at number 10, bush beans. Now I know beans are a summer crop, and you might think that ship has sailed. But hear me out, 'cause an August planting of bush beans is one of the sweetest little surprises in the whole garden. Bush beans come in fast, 50 to 55 days for most varieties, and they don't need any curing or fussing. You plant them the first week or 2 of August, and you'll be picking fresh green beans in the middle of September when everybody else's bean patch is brown and finished. Here's why the fall crop is often better than the spring one. Those late beans set their pods in cooler weather, and they don't get hammered by the bean beetles the way the summer planting does, 'cause the bugs are winding down by then. The pods come in tender and clean. Now the one thing you can't fudge is the frost. Beans are tender as can be, and the first real frost will kill 'em flat overnight. So count backwards honest, add your 2 weeks of fall padding, and don't plant 'em later than that. Stick with bush types, not pole beans, 'cause you want fast and all at once, not a long, slow climb. Water 'em in well and keep 'em damp till they're up. A row of September green beans on the supper table will make you feel like you got away with something. At number 9, radishes. Now, if there was ever a crop for the impatient man, this is it. Radishes go from seed to supper in about 25 to 30 days. That's it. You can plant them in August, plant them again in September, and plant them a third time after that in a lot of places, and every single time you'll get a crop. If you've got a bare corner of the garden and you're wondering what to do with it, you throw radishes in it. There's no reason to leave that ground naked. Now, radishes actually do better in fall than spring, and here's why. Heat is what makes a radish go hot and woody and split on you. As the weather cools down through September, they come in mild and crisp and juicy. Plant them shallow, thin them out to a good inch apart, and don't you skip that thinning, 'cause a crowded radish makes all top and no bottom. And keep the water steady, 'cause uneven watering is what cracks 'em. And here's a bonus most folks never think about. Try the big winter radishes. I'm talking about daikon and black Spanish and the watermelon radish. Those want a longer run, 50, 60 days. So get them in early August. But they grow to the size of your forearm. They're mild, and they'll store in damp sand in the cellar for months right alongside your carrots and beets. Same seed packet price, 10 times the food. And that big daikon root drills right down through hardpan, so even the ones you leave in the ground are doing you a favor come spring. And at number 8, turnips. Now here's a crop that don't get much love these days, and that's a shame,
because the turnip is about the most honest, hard-working thing you can plant in August. They come up fast, they grow in cool weather, they don't ask much of you, and here's the best part. You get 2 different foods off one planting. You get the greens, which you can start picking in a month, and you get the root underneath, which will be ready in 50, 60 days, and will store in the cellar all winter.
Sow 'em direct, right in the ground, first half of August. Don't try to transplant a turnip. Like all root crops, they hate having their roots messed with. Scatter or drill your seed thin, cover it light, and thin the seedlings to about 4 inches when they're up a couple inches. The thinnings you pull go straight in the pot as greens, so nothing goes to waste there either. And here's what makes turnips a fall crop and not a spring crop. Frost makes them better. A turnip that's sat through a couple of hard frosts turns its starch to sugar to protect itself from freezing, and that root comes out of the ground sweet and mild instead of sharp and bitey. The same turnip that was rough in July is downright good in November. Mulch 'em heavy with straw, and in a lot of places you can dig 'em right out of the ground into December. That's real, honest winter food for about $2 in seed. Rolling on to number 7, beets. Now, beets are a fall crop through and through, and if you've only ever grown them in the spring, you're in for a treat. Same story as the turnip. You get greens and you get roots. 2 crops off one planting. Most beets need about 50 to 60 days, so aim to get them in the ground the first 2 weeks of August, and you'll be pulling them through October and into November. Now here's the thing about beet seed most folks don't know. What you think is one seed is actually a little cluster with 2 or 3 seeds in it. That's why beets always come up in a bunch and why thinning ain't optional. You snip the extras off at the soil line with scissors rather than pulling them, so you don't disturb the one you're keeping. Give the keepers 3 or 4 inches apart, and soak your seed overnight in a jar of water before you plant, because that seed coat is tough, and the soaking gets 'em up days faster in dry August ground. Beets like it steady, even water, no big dry spells, or they'll get woody rings inside. And just like the turnip, cold weather sweetens 'em right up. When it's time to pull 'em, twist the tops off, but leave an inch of stem and don't cut into the root itself, or they'll bleed out their color. Pack 'em in a box of damp sand in a cold cellar, and they'll keep for months. 2 crops from 1 seed packet, and a box of 'em in the cellar come Christmas. You can't beat that. And now we're at number 6, carrots. Now I'll be straight with you. A fall carrot is worth more than a spring carrot, and any old-timer will tell you the same. Here's why. A carrot that grows into the cold turns its starch to sugar, same as the turnip, and a carrot that's been through a few frosts is about the sweetest thing that comes out of a garden. Folks who say they don't like carrots have just never had one pulled out of cold October ground. Carrots need a longer run, figure 70 to 80 days for most varieties, so these need to go in early. First week of August in most places, and if you're up north, late July. Pick a shorter, faster variety if you're starting late. Those stubby types come in quicker than the long, slim ones. Now the whole trick with carrots is getting them up. That seed is tiny as dust. It goes in barely covered, and it takes 2, sometimes 3 weeks to germinate. And in August heat, that top 1/4 inch of soil can dry out in a single afternoon and kill the whole row. So here's what you do. Sow your row, water it, then lay a board or a wet burlap sack flat over the top of it. Peek under it every morning, and the second you see green, that board comes off. Water light and often. Get 'em up,
and the hard part's done. Thin them to an inch or two apart. Again, don't skip it. Crowded carrots come out like pencils.
And here's your bonus with carrots, the one the old-timers loved best. You don't even have to dig 'em. Come late fall, before the ground freezes hard, pile a thick blanket of straw or leaves a foot deep right over that carrot bed. Mark the row with a tall stake so you can find it under the snow, and go out and dig 'em fresh as you need 'em, clear into winter. The ground itself becomes your root cellar, and it don't cost you a dime. All right, we're down to number 5, and now we're getting into the greens, lettuce, and the salad crops. Now, if you gave up on lettuce back in June when it all shot up 2 feet tall and turned bitter as a walnut hull, I want you to give it another go, 'cause fall is when lettuce is at its absolute best. Lettuce is a cool weather plant by nature. Summer is its enemy. The heat and the long days are what make it bolt and go bitter. But a head of lettuce that fills out in the cool of late September and October comes in sweet, tender, and crisp. And it'll hold in the garden for weeks without turning on you. Most leaf lettuces go about 45 to 55 days, and the loose leaf kinds you can start cutting at 30. So you plant through August and right into early September. And here's the thing you ought to do. Plant a little every couple weeks instead of all at once. That's what folks call succession planting, and it's the difference between having more salad than you can eat for 1 week and having salad on the table for 2 solid months. A short row every 10 days or so. Takes 5 minutes. Now the hard part, and I mentioned it earlier, lettuce seed will flat refuse to sprout in hot soil. Above about 80 degrees, it goes dormant on you and just lays there. So you've got 2 ways around it. 1, plant in the evening, water good, and cover the row with a board or shade cloth to hold the cool and damp. Check under it every morning. Or 2, and this is what I do most years, start your lettuce in a flat in the shade on the porch where you can baby it, and set the little transplants out in the garden 3 or 4 weeks later when things have cooled off a touch. Lettuce transplants just fine, unlike your root crops. And don't stop at lettuce neither. This is the time for the whole salad bowl. Arugula's up and ready to cut in 3 weeks. Mustard greens and mizuna and the whole Asian greens family come in fast and love the cool. And a mesclun mix is about the best value in the seed rack. Scatter it thick, cut it with scissors an inch above the soil, and it'll come back and give you a second and third cutting. Throw a piece of row cover over your greens in September, and it'll keep the flea beetles from turning them into lace. Fresh salad out of your own garden in November, when the store stuff is limp and costs a fortune. That's a fine feeling. At number 4, we've got the heavy hitters, broccoli, cauliflower, and the cabbage family. Now this is the crown of the fall garden right here. A head of broccoli that matures in cool weather is tighter, sweeter, and darker green than anything you'll grow in spring, and it don't get that loose, flowery look that heat gives it. Cauliflower's the same. It needs cool to make a good white head, and fall gives it exactly that. And a solid head of fall cabbage will go in the cellar or in the kraut crock and feed you deep into winter. But here's the catch with this bunch, and it's why they're at number 4 instead of number 1. They're slow. Broccoli and cauliflower want 60 to 85 days, and cabbage can want 90. That means August is your absolute deadline, and honestly, for most of us, this is a transplant job, not a seed job. You either buy sturdy starts from the nursery, a lot of good garden centers put them out in August just for this, or you started them in flats back in July. If you're reading this and you didn't start any, go buy transplants
and get 'em in the ground the first 2 weeks of the month. Don't dawdle on this one. Set 'em out in the cool of the evening. Water 'em in real good, and give 'em some shade for the first few days. A shingle stuck in the ground on the west side of each plant works fine. That's an old trick, and it works. These are hungry plants, so work in plenty of compost and give 'em a feedin of something with nitrogen a few weeks in. Watch for the cabbage worms. Those little white butterflies flitting around your garden in August are laying eggs on your plants right now. And row cover from day one is the easiest answer there is. If you miss 'em, a dust of BT will handle it.
And here's your bonus with broccoli that a lot of folks don't know. When you cut that big center head, don't pull the plant. Leave it be, keep watering it, and it'll throw side shoots, little broccoli heads all up and down the stalk, and you'll keep cutting those for weeks after. Broccoli takes a light frost without blinking, and the cabbage family in general just gets sweeter for it. One planting, a long harvest. Number 3, Swiss chard and the beet greens family. Now here's a plant I think every single garden ought to have a row of, and hardly anybody plants it in August. Chard is a beet that's been bred for its leaves instead of its root, and it has got 2 qualities that make it perfect for the fall garden. It's fast. You can start cutting leaves in about 35 days, and it's full size by 50. And it's a cut and come again plant. You don't harvest a chard plant once and it's done. You go out with a knife, you take the biggest outer leaves off the outside of the plant, you leave the little ones in the middle alone, and that plant will keep pushing out new leaves for 2-3 months straight. Plant it direct in the ground through August or set out transplants. Same as beets, that seed is a cluster, so thin the seedlings to 6 or 8 inches and use the thin ends in the pot. Chard will handle the last of the summer heat better than lettuce or spinach will, which is why it's such a good bridge crop. It goes in while it's still hot, and it's still standing when it's cold. And chard is tough. It'll take a frost and a good mulch of straw around the base and a piece of row cover over the top will carry it well past the first hard freeze in a lot of places. There's folks who've cut chard at Thanksgiving. It cooks like spinach. It freezes well if you've got more than you can eat, and one 20-foot row will feed a family greens for the whole fall. For the money and the effort, there ain't much that beats it. And now we're at number 2, spinach. Now, spinach might be the single most valuable thing you can plant in the late summer garden, and here's why. It ain't just a fall crop. It's a fall crop and a spring crop off one planting. This is the trick our great-grandparents knew, and it's called overwintering. Here's how it works. You sow your spinach in late August into early September. It comes up in the cooling weather, and you eat off it all through October and November, and it takes frost like it's nothing. Spinach actually gets sweeter and darker and thicker leaved in the cold. It's a different vegetable from the summer stuff. Then, as real winter sets in and the daylight drops off, the plant just stops. It don't die, it just sits there, a little rosette of leaves huddled down on the ground, holding on. You throw a good mulch of straw over it, or a low tunnel of row cover, and you leave it be. And then in February or March, when the light comes back and there ain't a green thing anywhere else on the whole place, that spinach wakes up and takes off, and you're eating fresh spinach out of your garden weeks before anybody else has even tilled their ground. That's about the earliest food you'll ever harvest, and it come from seed you put in the ground back in August. Now, getting spinach up in warm soil is the same struggle as lettuce. It wants that soil under 70 degrees. So sow it toward the end of the month rather than the start. Plant it a good half-inch deep where it's cooler, keep it damp, and shade the row till it's up. Soak the seed a day ahead if your ground is dry. Sow it a little thicker than you think, 'cause germination in August ain't 100%, and thin later. Get that right, and one August afternoon's work feeds you in November and in March. And now, the moment we've been waiting for. Number 1. And it's the toughest, most generous, hardest working plant in the whole fall garden. Kale. And its cousin, the collard. Now, I put kale at number 1 for one simple reason. Nothing else you plant in August will still be feeding you in December and January the way kale will. Every other crop on this list has an end. Kale just keeps standing there. Kale takes about 50 to 60 days to full size, so August is right on time. Plant seed the first couple of weeks or set transplants any time in the month. It ain't fussy about soil, it don't mind a little shade, and it germinates just fine in warm ground, which puts it a leg up on the lettuce and the spinach right from the start. Give the plants a foot or a foot and a half of room, 'cause a happy kale plant gets big. And you harvest it just like the chard. You never pull the plant. You take the big outer leaves from the bottom, you leave the crown in the middle to keep growing, and that one plant will feed you for months. Folks call it a chicken leg kale by December, 'cause the stalk gets tall and bare at the bottom with a tuft of leaves up top. That's exactly what you want to see. But here's the real magic, and it's the same thing we've said all through this list, just turned all the way up. Frost don't hurt kale. Frost improves it. A kale plant that's been through a hard freeze converts its starches to sugars to keep from freezing solid, and the leaves come out mild and almost sweet, with none of that tough, cabbagey bite the summer leaves have. Folks who swear they hate kale have only ever eaten it in July. Go out and pick a leaf that's got frost still on it and taste it. You won't believe it's the same plant. Mulch the base heavy with straw. Throw a piece of row cover over it when the real cold comes. And in most of the country, a good curly kale or a Siberian kale or a row of collards will stand right through the snow and let you go out and cut supper in the dead of winter. There's not one other thing on this whole list that'll do that. Green food out of your own dirt in January off a seed you planted in August. That's why it's my number 1. Now, before we wrap up, one bonus that ain't a fall harvest but belongs in this conversation. Garlic. You won't eat it this fall. You plant it in the fall and dig it next summer. But late August is when you order it, and you want the good seed garlic from a grower, not the stuff from the grocery store that's been treated to keep it from sprouting. Get your order in now while the good varieties are still in stock, and come October, you'll poke those cloves in the ground, mulch them with straw, and forget about them till June. It's the longest paying crop there is, and it starts with a phone call in August. So there you have it. 10 things to plant this month for a full fall harvest. Bush beans, radishes, turnips, beets, carrots, lettuce and salad greens, broccoli and the cabbage family, Swiss chard, spinach, and the mighty kale. Get those in the ground in the next few weeks, and that garden of yours will be feeding you long after your neighbors have tilled theirs under and called it a year. Now, if you're just starting out and this feels like a lot, don't try to do all 10. If I was starting fresh this August, I'd plant 4 things. A row of radishes, 'cause you'll be eating them in a month, and it'll keep your spirits up. A row of turnips or beets for the cellar. A good patch of kale, and a bed of spinach at the end of the month for the winter and the early spring. Them four are the most forgiving. They cover you the longest, and they'll get you hooked on fall gardening for good. Next year, you add the carrots and the broccoli and the rest. And remember the rules. Know your frost date and count backwards. Add 2 weeks of padding for the shorter days. Baby them seeds through the August heat with water and a little shade. And keep some row cover handy for October. Do that, and one afternoon's work this month will put food on your table clear into winter. If this was helpful to you, do me a big favor and smack that like button. It truly helps this little channel grow. And if you ain't subscribed yet, come on and join us. I put out honest, down-to-earth homestead and gardening advice every single week, straight from the farm. And I want to hear from you down in the comments. What's your first frost date? And what are you putting in the ground this August? I read every one. Now get on out there and plant something worth eating this fall. Take care, y'all.